Let me tell you about my friend, Mary Henderson. Mary is a licensed professional clinical counselor, that's a mouthful, and a licensed family and marriage therapist. She divides her time between speaking, writing, and counseling. She and her husband, John, who are friends of my husband and mine, have been with Crew, which is an international ministry, a nonprofit ministry for 40 years, right? And they've lived in New Zealand, Eastern Europe, Russia, and the United States, and presently live here in Austin. The Hendersons have 3 grown kids, as you can see, and have 1 married daughter and a beautiful family, and 2 of them live here in town. Yeah, the two boys live in town. Yeah. And the thing I appreciate about Mary is she's like that combination of a go-getter and goes after life, and like she's leaving here today to go do some ministry at the prison. So I mean, she's just pouring her life out all the time for people. Yet she's so gracious. Like, she has been there for me in my time of need and very gracefully helped me through issues in my life. And so I really appreciate you as a friend and that you're sharing with us. So she's going to enlighten us today, and we have some outlines. I wanted to tell you, like I said, she has 2 books. You can, thanks, Janet. We would be lost without this Janet Oddie woman, I'm just telling you. You get her emails. But there is also a website on there for Mary. If you have any interest in looking at her books or looking more at what she offers, feel free to look at that. I know they sell them on Amazon, and you're welcome to grab one. So anyway, I'm going to leave it with you.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. I'll take a minute and count these down. Well, it is just such a joy, really, a blessing to be here with you all, because this really does have such a feeling of being a haven of replenishment, of rest, of safety. You all are so blessed, as I'm sure you know, to be able to come here. And it has that feeling when I come. I've been here before, and you all just have this wonderful space you hold twice a month, I think, and can get here and get refueled and then go out there to everything that the world holds beyond this place. So thank you for having me. I've been married for 41 years, and whenever that comes up to people, one of the inevitable things they ask is, how have you done it? How have you been here 41 years? And my answer is always very simple. It's Jesus and counseling. Because really, without a relationship with God through Jesus, I don't know. I could not have weathered all the seasons that come. As you know, if you've been married for any length of time, many hard seasons, years sometimes, then some good seasons, and everything in between. And without God as a constant companion, his strength, his camaraderie, his encouragement, his wisdom, truly, I could not do this. It's not about me. And there's a verse that speaks to that, Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. Many of you are familiar with it. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. And pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. And then it throws this little last sentence in. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And of course, that 3rd strand is talking about adding is God in a mix. And I will say, if you're here today and you're single, these principles apply to really every relationship. None of us can make it in this world alone, with a friendship, with parent relationships, with child relationship, whatever, without having God be right in there with you every step of the way. So please apply these principles, whatever your situation, because they apply across the board. God has, in addition to Jesus himself, what he provides is counseling. Like I said, Jesus and counseling. And so my husband and I have gone for counseling. My husband is like many husbands that is very reluctant to go to counseling. I'll share with you a few tips I've learned. because I didn't start my degree till I was in my 40s. So I experienced quite a bit of life in child raising before I even started on the path of being a counselor. But I've learned that being around not only good counselors, but just putting myself in an environment with people who have wisdom. For example, being involved in my church throughout my life, hearing sermons throughout my life, my husband too. That all goes into that counseling category of being the proactive choice to be with people who have good insight and good things to offer. So I attribute the 41 years to that as well. And as a licensed marriage and family therapist, I have the privilege of having a lot of information ever since I was in my 40s, a lot of approaches, a lot of strategies for helping marriages to thrive. And believe me, I have worked hard to fly roast to myself as well as to help my clients. And I've seen the approaches that work really well, and then I've seen the ones that don't work quite so well, all within the field of counseling. And, you know, as a practitioner in psychology, one of the things that's really important to us is research. What approaches has there been a lot of research on, and under controlled research standard environments, and these principles hold true across the board. It's not like self-help books where people put out ideas that sound good. What we're looking for as practitioners is those approaches that stand up under some pretty hardy research. So last time when I was here, I shared one of those approaches, and it's from the School of Psychology called Attachment Therapy. And the book I shared with you in the website is How We Love, howwelove.com. That comes from that School of Attachment Therapy, widely researched, very effective. So today I want to share another thing. And when Carol said, will you come speak on marriage tune-up, I thought, what would be most helpful for them? What could they hear today, and really what could make a big difference in your life, in your children's lives, if you were able to pass this along, in friends. And as I thought, one thing came immediately to mind. And I think of the verse, Matthew 13:52, where Jesus was speaking to a crowd. He said, every scribe who's been trained for the kingdom from heaven is like the master of a household, who brings both new and old things out of the treasure chest. I love that picture. That out of what you have to offer your kids, your environment, you can bring out the old treasures and the new treasures. Well, in our context, the old treasure, although it's very current still, is the How We Love that I shared last time. And the new treasure, although it's been around a long time too, that I'm bringing out of my treasure chest is this book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by Dr. John Gottman. Now, Dr. Gottman is a stalwart, a giant in the field of psychology and marriage counseling. Any clinical psychologist from around the world, if you talk marriage counseling, he might be the top of the heap. Dr. John Mordecai Gottman, he was born in 1942 to Orthodox Jewish parents, and he's a professor emeritus of psychology at the University of Washington, and he heads the Relational Research Institute and the Gottman Institute with his wife, who's also a psychologist, Dr. Julie Gottman. So wouldn't that be a wonderful marriage to be part of? They're both very gracious, down-to-earth people to listen to also. It's amazing how humble and easy to talk to. But the thing that makes him outstanding, and even in psychologist eyes, is he has done research on literally thousands of couples to come to the principles that he puts forth. Does this work? What does work? What doesn't? As I'm watching marriages, as I'm observing them under these research standard environments, what do I see and tease out that is helping marriages to thrive? And that's what he includes. He has a vast array of books. He's written a vast array of scholarly articles. But this is one I've seen in my life and the people I recommend to be very, very practical, and it consolidates a lot of what he's found. So 7 principles for making marriage work. Now, as I'm mentioning this to you, I know that research shows that wives are most likely to seek counseling. Husbands, in research, are the norm. The norm is they are not as willing or wanting of counseling. There are exceptions for sure. So, as I'm talking to you, I know there will be a group here who will be like, great, I'll have to say to my husband, let's go through this. There'll be those that he's gonna be a little reluctant. There are gonna be those that say, no way, he's gonna wanna do this. And there are those that are in a situation where you're barely on speaking terms and on the verge of divorce. So I'm aware of that as I address that. And it's interesting, because as he writes this, it's written in everyday language, so down to earth that I know, and as I hear what he's done with the book and how he presents it, he knows that's who's reading it. And he has presented things in a way that even reluctant people can be brought in by the way he approaches things. But I would say first, before you approach your husband with anything regarding reading a book or counseling, if you're at the stage where you'd like to seek counseling, and I'm going to make a referral for counseling at the end, I think it's on your handout at the bottom, is you have to really think before you have that conversation. You don't want to, and I know at this stage of life, we've all probably learned this, we can't just go in with our frustration, babble it out. Nothing good's going to happen, but I really encourage you to go away and think before you bring this up. And think about what you're going to say that will keep his defenses down as much as possible, to do it in a very kind and respectful way. But I will also say to do it in a way where you are determined that as much as you're able to, you are going to cause this to happen. And I don't mean being forceful, but what I mean by that is a lot of time in my practice, I know that the spouse who wants to see the change has through years realized it's going to be really easy to be talked out of this. And he's going to come up against it and not want to do it, and then I'm going to easily back away. So I encourage people to think, do you want to go through the rest of your life on this planet in the current state that you're in? The current state of misery, the current state of communication, because that's what'll happen, because these marriages don't just get better on their own. Like most things, it takes intentionality. So we have to build up our own determination to have a conversation like this. Like, I'm gonna, with God's help, having prayed up beforehand, praying he'll work, but with God's help, I am going to present this and not back down easily. Based on, and I'm gonna tell him, do we wanna go through the rest of our lives with this state of our relationship, or do we want to have, and this is where you want to make it positive, a relationship that's really good, really enjoyable, really a mutual source of encouragement for both of us, because that's what I want with you. I want a relationship that's really good, and I heard about this book, and it's really good at taking people from a difficult place in very practical ways. This is full of practical activities to help us get to a better place. There will be some that know that you need to have counseling, and I would suggest the same kind of a thought process beforehand. And when you present the idea of counseling, the same determination. If he says no, there's two options. One, a lot of people will go ahead and say, all right, well that's fine. I'm going to start counseling on my own to work on our marriage so that I can do what I can to help us get to a better place. And say it with love, but you do it. And a lot of times, after you've gone 2, 3, 4 times, that husband, she's talking about him there. I think I'm going to go too. The husband will come, and the counselor will help you know how to broach that. And if he doesn't come, will help you know how to continue. And another great resource is the website changemyrelationship.com. And it's there on your notes. It's a friend and colleague in California, Carla Downing. Her specialization is this, helping spouses in relationships that one wants to change, the other does not. So what does this person do? And her website is full of resources, books, YouTube videos. I can't give you a better resource if that's your situation. But as you're listening to what I say today, think about what you can apply and things that you could start now. And I just encourage, if you have a pen, to go ahead and just maybe write, as we look at your handouts, next to the point we're on, if there's a practical point that you put, that you think, I think that's one I really want to start employing myself. And at the end, if we have time, we'll have questions and answers, and so write any questions that come up also. So there on your notes, if you look at your handout, I list the 7 principles that Gottman talks through in his book. And enhance your love maps, nurture your fondness and admiration, turn toward each other instead of away, let your spouse influence you, solve your solvable problems, overcome gridlock, and create shared meaning. And of course, for each of those areas, he explains in very easy to understand knowledge what that means, as well as for each one gives you a lot of practical, fun exercises to work through together. For example, on the first one, enhance your love maps. I put a little description of what each one is. So he says a love map is that part of your brain where you store all the relevant information about your spouse's life, such as their worries, hopes, and goals in life, their history, the facts and feelings of their world. According to Gottman, happily married couples use this love map to express not only their understanding of each other, but their fondness and admiration as well. And this reminds me of when you were first in love. This is what that's described. Remember, you didn't have to work. You wanted to know everything about them. You wanted to know all the details. You delighted in little details of their past, their history, what they like, what they don't like. What his research has shown is that's what we have to keep nurturing and developing. So, in the book, one of the exercises he gives is called the Love Map Questions game. And you ask each other questions and give yourself points based on the right answers. And it's kind of like the old-fashioned newlywed game, if you ever saw that.
Yeah.
You ask a question about yourself to each other, and then you tell them, is that right or not? And it's all done in a fun, lighthearted way. For example, some of the questions are, name my 2 closest friends. And so maybe sounds easy, but you probably have a few close friends. So talk about that a little bit. Another one, what is my favorite music group, composer, or instrument? And who is my favorite relative? So he has 50 of them, or 60. I think he has you choose 10, but encourages you to come back. And there are apps of these games also. So you can find those and do them at other random times. So that's one example of an exercise he gives you. And as often as possible, they're playful. He knows he's dealing with couples that may have a lot of conflict, a lot of grudges, he doesn't say that, but I know it, the way he has structured it, he knows what's going on. So he tries to make them playful, he tries to make them fun, and something that the reluctant one will be like, hey, this is kind of cool, I like this. So the second one he mentions is nurture your fondness and admiration, and he says, nurturing fondness and admiration involves meditating on your spouse and what makes you cherish him or her. Again, it was easy. Just think back to that newly, dating self that you were. But now he gives exercises after you've been married a long time. So one of them he gives is called the 7-week course in fondness and admiration. So that sounds, whoa, 7 weeks is so easy. What he has you do. He has you, where did I put that? Here it is. It's here on these 2 pieces of paper. This is what it involves. Is I put this by he doesn't say this, but this is one way you can. I don't think he says, I put it where I put on makeup every day. So it's 7 weeks, 5 days in all. On Monday, each day I have a thought and a task. Monday, my thought, because I'm putting on makeup, I'm genuinely fond of my spouse. Okay, again, most of us who are picking up this book are probably, we may not resonate with that thought. So he's helping to develop that. So he says, your task, while I'm putting on makeup, is list one characteristic you find endearing or lovable. So putting on makeup, well, even when we're mad and all that, we can think of something lovable. And I remember one thing I thought of my husband, when he's excited and he has his little feet, his big feet, he's 6'5", in socks, and I'm telling him something, his feet, and he likes it, his feet start twitching. He's not even aware of it, and I don't call it attention. So those kind of things. Another one is the thought for Friday. My spouse has specific qualities that make me proud. So as I'm putting on makeup, what is one characteristic that makes you proud? So I'm thinking about my husband. I'm proud of how he interacts with people. He's a real people person. So 7 weeks of this, he is getting a new habit going in your and your husband's brain. So that's the activity, one of many for that second principle. The third one is turn toward each other. Turning toward each other means connecting with your spouse, being there for each other during the minor events in each other's lives, responding favorably to your spouse's bids for attention, affection, humor, or support. Husbands really tend to like this book, or anybody that's reluctant about psychology, because it's all like this. Very practical, very behavioral, stays away from psychological mumbo jumbo. And of course, I love that, but the person I'm married to really doesn't. And so I've tested this, and he likes it, and everybody I've referred it to agrees. It has these practical, fun kind of things. So for this principle, he has an activity called the emotional bank account, and he lists 50 ways that you can invest in each other's emotional bank, meaning ways you connect with each other in little ways. So you choose item off this long list of ways. I think you choose like 4 items, and you share with each other and thank the other for having done these. This is how you're investing in their emotional bank. So on page 95, I was meaning to have my glasses, but I'll be able to see it if I hold it back. Okay. So, for example, you look through and you choose a few and you say them to each other. So, one of mine, it was go out with no kids for brunch or dinner, or to your favorite place. So, I said to my husband, thank you that we have this in our calendar, that every Friday we go out together, and I really appreciate that that's so important to you. And I'm telling you, he has thought of something that anyone can find something off this list. So that's one way you practice this. And I'll say, the way my husband and I did this, and I say when you set this up, is to decide a certain day of the week that will be on your schedule to work on this. And I would set aside 2 hours, because I think it's easiest to read together and do the exercises as you go rather than read separately. So for my husband and I, we love to hike. So what we did is we will drive to a place, and sometimes the drive will take 30 minutes to an hour. The other one that wasn't driving would read the book out loud, and then on the hike, we either brought the book or photocopied the exercises, and for an hour or so we would read these to each other. That's our way of doing it. Or you can go for coffee, go out to dinner, whatever is enjoyable. If you need to do it twice a month, I would say, but get it on that calendar, otherwise we know it won't happen. So I would set that up. And if it takes 2 years to work through, which it might, it's okay. Just you're really growing and learning and loving this activity, really. They're actually very enjoyable. And he puts the little more delicate ones later, although they're still fun, the more conflict-related things. Principle number 4, let your spouse influence you. He says accepting influence means sharing power, making your spouse a partner in your decision-making, by taking their opinions and feelings into account. Now, this is very interesting. I start reading the chapter, and he's talking to the husbands. He doesn't say anything. He's just writing to the husbands. I wonder why he would be writing to husbands about this one. Although I know we have our ways also, and some women that's more their nature, but I think by and large, because of testosterone, it's often the men that have a little more challenge with sharing power and decision-making. And so that's encouraging for us as we read this, because he, a man, is sharing with men some things, and sharing that research shows people are happier in their marriage when this principle is true. He keeps bringing you back to that. This is not his idea. This is what thousands of couples of research have shown to make a happy relationship. He has something on this one called the Gottman Island Survival Game. And this is a fun, again, an example of how it makes these fun. You and your husband imagine you've been on a cruise ship, and something disastrous happened, the ship sank, you come to, and you both are alone on a deserted island, and you're surrounded by about 60 items from the ship, and one of you's injured, and there's a storm approaching, but you know that there's some shelter you can get to. So you have to choose only 10 of the items to bring with you to the shelter. So you each take out a piece of paper and write 1 through 10, 1 being your most important item you take, 10 the least. You each do that separately. Now, you just read a chapter on how to share influence and power. Using those principles, you work together to come up with your list of how together, what would you decide is your 1 to 10 based on your 2 separate lists. You work that through, and you have in mind, okay, we just read this stuff about, sharing decision-making. Then at the end, he has you take a questionnaire on how you did with sharing the decision-making, with sharing power. And so that's an example of fun, yet really helpful and practical exercises, yes. I won't go through every one of these. Number 5, solve your solvable problems, is the conflict resolution chapter, and very helpful, like I list with 5 ways, and he describes how to resolve conflict, because I think we all kind of need a roadmap. And together, as you're reading this, you can say, okay, so we've been doing it this way all along, let's let these 5 be our guide from now on. He goes to the next one, a little more serious, 6, overcome gridlock. So this is one you're locked in and you cannot make progress on either a topic, or you've been really, really hurt, you feel rejected by your spouse, things that are just really hard to talk to about. And that's where he addresses that. Same kind of approach, practical, same thing, examples and kind of game. First of how to solve it, he gives you, one of the exercises is he lists 6 of the most common issues couples get gridlocked on. Like he'll say, Nancy and Hal don't want to have sex as often. You know, one wants it more, one wants it less. Another is, you know, Steve and Susan. She's the spender in the relationship, he is the saver. And then he gives, you talk together about this scenario, and together he goes, kind of gives a bad example of how they solved it, and then using what he's just taught you, you together talk, well, how can Steve and Susan solve this using these principles? So it's kind of non-threatening, because together you're putting your heads together of how they could do better. You know, you're learning from that. And then the final one he gives is create shared meaning. And he describes shared meaning as a spiritual dimension to a marriage. It has to do with creating an inner life together. And he doesn't come or promote any particular faith or belief system. So he gives some exercises that nurture that oneness wherever you're at spiritually, ways to create kind of routines in your relationship, like how do we want it to look when we wake up in the morning? How do we want it to look when we part company? Do we want to kiss? You know, things that maybe stick in your craw a bit, but you've never talked about them. Or how do we want holidays to look? How do we want anniversaries to look? Then he finishes the book with some just great practical general recommendations for daily activities that help keep your marriage healthy. And I'll just leave that cliffhanger because they are very good for you if you get the book. Again, it's on Amazon. I don't get any, he doesn't even know me, so I have no profit from this book. Except the profit I've had in my own personal relationship and seeing others really benefit through this. And like I said, I wanted to give you something that you go away and go, okay, I have something practical that would help, you know, that would really help. And one thing you could do, if your relationship is such, you could give this as a Christmas gift and say, and I also gift, you know, like 24 dates this coming year, or, you know, whatever, so that we can talk through it. If your relationship is on the grounds where that would work, or it's your relationship is at a place where that is not as helpful. But that would be one idea. So don't forget about that, changemyrelationship.com. It's a great website, even when your husband is in a place of, you know, where you can talk well. It's got good principles, and any relationship that's hard. She takes these principles from a much broader place of just relationships in general when they're difficult. So that website. And then for counseling of any sort, marriage counseling and otherwise, my recommendation is Center for Relational Care. The website is there at the bottom, relationalcare.org. And on that, they have offices in North and South Austin. You can go on, and each of the counselors has a video of themselves. So you can kind of get a feel for each counselor and how you know, resonate with them. And they have a variety of fees based on various counselors. So that's one that I like to refer people to. So in my last couple of minutes, I don't know if anybody has any questions, and I don't know if I'll have the answers, but I just gotta open the floor.